Hello, my good huntsman. Or huntress. Or perhaps you prefer hunter. I'm not really super certain. But I imagine, no matter who you are, if you're watching this, you are one of three people just about it. Either number one, you like Edgar Allan Poe. Number two, you saw that god-awful tweet I made a few days ago, and you're now morbidly curious where I'm going with this. Or number three, what I would say is probably the most likely, you slept through the video and now you've got to cram for that test on Friday. But regardless of who you are and why you're here, welcome! Welcome. Come, take a seat and let us read about good old Edgar. And before we get into any of that, I should probably elaborate as to what this video actually is, considering I sincerely doubt I thought of a good title that fully explains everything I'm doing. So, here are my main goals. Number one, I'm looking to explain the Raven. The main reason being for this is I feel that regardless of who you are, you're probably going to be exposed to the Raven at some point. And as much as I hate to acknowledge it, one of the biggest barriers for entry to any of Poe's poems primarily comes down to the fact that he wrote things in Old English, which is like trying to decipher something on the Rosetta Stone. Also, I just want to read the Raven. That's also good. As well as talk about Poe. I just have been on a big Poe kick and wanted to talk about him. And the last and arguably most important thing, you see, I need to find an excuse to not go Gosling mode while listening to All the Leaves Are Brown and staring off into the middle distance. Okay, so to accomplish sort of explaining the Raven and breaking it down, first I feel we need to talk a little bit about Poe himself, because I feel the best way to enjoy his work is to understand a little bit about him. Primarily being, Poe was at sad boy hours all the time. Like, oh my god, this man's life was depressing. So, let's sort of talk about that and try to explain a little bit. So, to continue to help with explaining about why Poe is the king of all sad boy hours, I have made a visual aid to sort of help you imagine what Poe would look like if he was here today, because I feel like he would look something like this. Yeah, you thought that joke was purely for the beginning. No, that was the joke this script started with. Okay, so to sort of help explain why Poe is the king of all sad boys here, I merely have a simple question for you. Which one of these do you think is a fact about Edgar Allan Poe? He had to burn the furniture in his dorm purely to keep warm. He had an alcohol problem. He was sent to school with a fraction of the money needed. He died mysteriously, or his parents were taken from him at a very early age. Do you have the answer? Good, because I'm gonna tell you the answer. Yeah, the answer is all of them. It's literally all of the above. Okay, so now that we sort of have a background on him, you can probably see now that he actually had a pretty good reason for constantly going Gosling mode and downing his white wine spritzers, as it were. So, clearly, well, now that we understand a bit more about the cheery lad, we can actually get into reading the poem known as The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many the quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis a visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books cease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. and the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," I said, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I was scarce I heard you. Here I opened wide the door, darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo muttered back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," I said, "surely that is something from my window's lattice. Let's see then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutters, when with many a flirt and flutter, in stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not 1 minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon the bus of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiled my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the continents it wore. "Though thy chest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering the nightly shore. Tell me, thy lordly name is on the night's plutonium shore?" Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour, nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends had flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as all my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," I said, "what at others is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom's unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his song one burden bore, till his dirges of hope that melancholy burden bore of never, never more. But the raven still beguiled all my fancies into smiling. Straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking, what this ominous bird of yore? What this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore, mint and croaking, nevermore? This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamp's light gloated o'er. But whose velvet violet lining the lamp's light gloating o'er? She shall press, ah, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfume from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim, whose foot felt tinkle on the tuft floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee respite, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff, this kind nepenthe, and forgot this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, I said, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempters sent, or whether temptress tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet ye undaunted, on this desert land imprinched, on this home horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, I said, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that binds above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, within the distant Aden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom's the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that our sign of parting, bird or fiend? I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into thy temptress night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of thy lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit thy bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart. Take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, in the lamplight him streaming through my shadows and flow, and my soul from out the shadows that lies floating and flow shall be lifted nevermore. So, the events of the story aren't really super important. It's more a case of the symbolism in the story is what's important. Like, things such as, what does the raven actually represent in the story? But as far as the events go, it's rather simple. You see, the main character is basically getting wasted on some twisted tea, and he's falling asleep, and then he starts hallucinating, and that's where our poem can finally begin, and it sort of goes off the rails, because it all starts when he hears a knock at the door. I don't want to talk to people. Let me have my sad boy hours in peace, please. And then the knocking continues. Fine, I'm up. Okay. What's poppin'? I was taking a nap. But no one was there when he opened the door, and he continues to think about his dear love, Lenore. And, well, after waiting there for a bit, he goes back and sits down in his Fox News chair. But suddenly, the tapping starts again. The knocking starts once more, but it's louder this time. And he determines, okay, obviously that's not coming from the door. Clearly it's coming from my window. And upon opening the window, a raven actually pops in. Well, you seem a little peculiar for a raven. I certainly was not expecting a raven to be what was tapping on my door. So, tell me, my new little friend, what is your name?
Never again.
Okay, hold up for a second. Okay, you come in here, ruin my time when I go Gosling mode with my White Claw, and you want to say something that doesn't answer my question when I ask you. It's at that point our main character starts pondering what this bird could theoretically mean, as it keeps saying, nevermore. However, that quickly then shifts from him pondering what the bird could mean to just more him questioning things. What? Are you gonna leave me like all my bros did before? I mean, they were all like, oh, don't worry, we're here for you, David, we're always gonna be here. But look at me now. They left, they couldn't handle my depression.
Never again.
And now you're just saying that. You probably don't even know what that means. You probably just learned it from your owner who had depression. Oh, how poor for him. He then pushes his InfoWars chair a bit closer to the raven, and as he takes a seat, he begins to think about Lenore and how he will never feel her touch again, never hear her voice ever again, and it's sad. Okay, hold on, wait a minute, wait just one gosh diddly darned second. I know what this is about. You're talking about Lenore. Get out. Out of my house. Out now.
Never again.
Get out of my house now, you stupid demon bird.
Never again.
Look, I'm not entirely sure what you are, but please, just tell me. Will I ever see Lenore ever again?
Never again.
Fine. Then get out of my house and take your stuff with you.
Quote the raven. Nevermore.
And then the raven was all like, I got squatter's rights, okay, I don't have to leave. And then the guy comes to on his floor, and he finds out that he's been staring at a taxidermied raven all night. And that's just where the poem ends! Honestly, it's a great poem. Wonderful depiction of just the emotion of mourning, I think. Specifically mourning of a lost love. It's also never stated if Lenore died or if she just ran off and took the kids. But point is, she's gone, and our main character is having big Gosling mode hours about the fact that Lenore is gone. So yeah, that's really all the poem is. Like, that right there, you have enough to sort of understand the poem. It's a great poem. I actually really enjoy it, but I just wanted to give you like a Reader's Digest version of it. However, I actually don't fully understand part of the poem myself. Like, there are some things that I'm like, I'm hit or miss with my honest depictions of because I never bothered to ask. But, like, I'm pretty sure the Raven, and what the Raven means by nevermore, is that it's saying never again, and that's also why it stayed, is in the main character's head, he's like, will I ever love again? Will I ever see Lenore again? And the bird's just like, never again. Nope, not gonna happen. So I do hope you found this video useful, or if you're here simply because you like the poem, I do hope you enjoyed it and got a little something out of it, maybe hopefully got a good chuckle. 'Cause, you know, it's not exactly an easy poem to get. Like, honestly, it is hard to get into at first, because I'll always think, oh yeah, that's a good poem, I want to read that poem again. And then just like, yeah, no, not gonna do this again, because trying to decipher what any of this means is like trying to read in a foreign language that you know nothing about. Which I realize, as a guy who likes poems, that's kind of like saying, oh yeah, you know, I like listening to the music, but occasionally I just wish they would stop with the interminstrels and tell me what they're trying to say. Except I have a counterpoint that I have read plenty of poems in normal English that I can fully understand. So I believe this is purely down to this being, at least as far as the language used going, this is a very much product of the language at the time, and the fact that it's been a very long time between when this was written and the year of our Lord and Savior 2023. Anyway, if you'd like to read some more darker sort of short stories or poems, I do have a few recommendations for you. I'll just start with the stuff in Poe's work that I can highly recommend, because I doubt I'll get to it anytime soon, but I highly recommend The Cast of Amontillado and Telltale Hearts. The Cast of Amontillado is why you should never get drunk with your friends, and Telltale Hearts is purely about going crazy and hearing something in the floorboards. I am not going to elaborate any further on that, because I feel like that is the best hook for that one, specifically. And if you're kind of burnt out on Poe, but you still want like a relatively dark poem, but a bit lighter than The Raven, I highly recommend Robert Frost's Of Ice and Fire, because that poem is fire. Yes, the pun was intended. It's basically about contemplating the end of the world or the end times. It's very good. Or perhaps another dark, short piece of literature that I can highly recommend. I recommend looking up something called A Modest Proposal. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. Honestly, I can highly recommend that anyone just look up A Modest Proposal. Please, for the love of God, you will not regret it. It is fantastic. And also, a great idea. Anyway, I gotta dip, because I got a rhythm game that's calling my name, and also tomorrow is half-off chocolate day. So, if you're enjoying Valentine's Day, good for you and your partner. I hope you guys have a great time. And if you aren't, chocolates are half off tomorrow. Good luck in the Stampede competition. Alright, bye! Thank you.